Hello, good evening, and welcome to Prog Chattery 777. We're talking about Van der Graaf Generator, and we've made it all the way to 2005 with present. Um, about 27 years after after the band split in 1978, I believe it was. The last album with new material was Vital. The live album and the last studio album was Quiet Zone Pleasure Dome. That was with a different band. This is the first album with the classic lineup of Guy Evans, Peter Hamill, David Jackson, and Hugh Banton. It's the first album by that lineup since World Record, 1976. It's also, let's be honest, quite likely the last record with David Jackson on it. He ended up leaving the band after the reunion tour. It must have been a really strange thing for the band to be a band again. The idea to reunite came from the fact that they were meeting up with each other at funerals for their old road crew, and so that kind of put the thought in their ear to, if they were going to reunite, they might as well do it while they were still healthy. And I'm certainly glad they did. But yeah, it's kind of an interesting period of Van der Graaf, really, because this album itself, I like it and I listen to it, but it's kind of an oddball. It's something that needed to happen to allow the band to continue. They were I think the band was very conscious not to make it just a reunion show. Although they did do this, I'm going to talk a bit about this in this video as well, real time. This is the first show they played in close to 30 years at the Royal Festival Hall in London. And it's funny because they didn't want it to be, a typical reunion kind of a thing. They wanted to reform as a band and be, re-experience that and revisit the spirit of Van der Graaf rather than just revisiting the songs. And what's kind of strange about it is that this live album from the first concert of their reunion is kind of like the typical reunion, kind of thing. It's the set list is really a best of. It's a compilation of classic Van der Graaf tracks, which is good, but it feels like they're doing it to revisit the old stuff. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I should talk about the actual studio album that was recorded after the reunion. Like I said, it's an interesting one. It's kind of an oddball. It's quite different, I think, from other albums by the classic lineup, the classic four-piece, in that those classic albums, thinking God Bluff, Pawn Hearts, Still Life, and World Record, the songs are very much arranged. They're big, they're compositions. The whole band contributed to making these kind of long, complex, arranged pieces. I say that's how I'm describing it right now. I really like arranged. Whereas this, a lot of the songs almost feel like they were jamming out, and it's about the sound. I think the arrangements are less complex here, and they're less stretched out. The song lengths are much shorter than on any of the other classic Van der Graaf albums. But it's more about the sound of the band. I think they were more conscientious of Van der Graaf sound, the dense organ and the saxophone wailing on top with Hamill's voice and the lyrics, of course, and Guy Evans' drumming, which I think his drumming improved. He developed. By the time you get to here, his drumming is far less rigid. He's got more of a swing to his playing, kind of like a good sloppiness. It's a drummer thing. I'm gonna say it's like a Ringo thing, I guess, but swingy and jazzy. All of Guy Evans' drumming in the reunion albums has had that quality. But yeah, aside from track one, and guess the arrangements are there, but it's different. It's more a tonal thing. The album opens. I should also mention it's a two CD album. It's got the whole. How does it unfold now? Yes, one of these styles. There's one. There's two. The first CD is kind of the album. That is the proper album of songs. So there's one instrumental on there, and the second CD is an hour or so of instrumentals, all improvised, just Van der Graaf jamming. Locked in a room with Van der Graaf generators. There's some lovely liner notes in here by Guy Evans. And he talks about the experience when they first got back together in the room to play again and rediscovered their sound. So I'm not going to talk too much about the second disc because I mean I'm less familiar with it. I don't listen to it as much because I'm with Van der Graaf. I'm typically more interested in the actual albums, but like the proper album bits. But it's unique. I do like the Van der Graaf jamming. It's hard to sit through for the whole disc. You know, I'll throw a couple on here and there, or maybe put it on the like road music if I'm in the car and kind of put it to a background level volume. But it's still cool. And again, that second disc, it really is it's a kind of a cool document of, like I said, what it must have been like for the band to rediscover their sound and get back together for the first time in so long, and try to do something fresh and new. And I'm doing this all out of order. Apologies. I covered the second disc before the first. We'll talk about the actual album now. It opens with Every Bloody Emperor, which I think this is the classic of the album. It was played live, one of only 2 songs that were played live from the album. Interestingly enough, again, they wanted it to be a new Van der Graaf, and yet there's a lot of looking to the past. Probably necessary though. It had been 30 years, and I'm sure there was a certain weight of expectation from the crowd for that tour. But Every Bloody Emperor is a really good song. It's again the classic Van der Graaf sound is there. The saxophone is fantastic. Really well produced too. It's got a clarity to it, but it's still chaotic and noisy and insane. It's a very heavy album, actually. And of course, Every Bloody Emperor is classic dark Hamill lyrics. I love the use of the word emperor because it reminds me of Emperor in his war room. And it's got the big madness bit in the end with Hugh Banton. Really cool. Classic Van der Graaf, and it's dynamic and all that. Then we get to track 2, Boleas Panic. This is an instrumental. And I think it's the only Van der Graaf song credited exclusively to David Jackson, and again probably the last one. I really like it. It's a little bit different from the stuff on disc 2 because I think it is a little more arranged. There is a definite melody line that they're referring to, and great bit of Hamill guitar work too. I love his raunchy playing style. Like I said, it's far from virtuoso playing, but it's very musical, and it brings a lot to, it's atmospheric in a way. I really like Hamill's guitar playing. We move on to track 3, Nutter Alert. This is probably more of the classic of the album because the trio has played it quite a bit. I think all 3 times I saw the band as the trio, they played Nutter Alert. And it's really good. This is where I start to really notice the more simplified format. It is kind of, verse chorus, quick madness section, end out. It's good. It has ties to Peter Hamill stuff. I should mention he had a very long solo career in between the Van der Graaf periods, and very good solo career. I think Nutter Alert takes some of the stuff from Hamill's solo stuff and Van der Graaf generates it. Then we move on to track 4, Abandoned Ship. Guy Evans has a writing credit on this. I really like this song, actually. This is a cool song. Kind of not typically Van der Graaf. Kind of comical lyrics about heptagenarians being of an older, wiser, I'm sure they would say, wiser band. Took me a while to get that out. It's really cool. It starts out with the sound of a loon, which being in Canada I can relate to quite a bit. I just love it. It's a very sleazy kind of sax riff. It's a very awkward. It's a very awkward riff, and again, it's simple. It's just a kind of couple of repeats of a verse, but Van der Graaf sound and the production is good. And yeah, then we move on to track 5. This is probably my favorite song on the album, actually, In Babelsberg. And I think I like this one more. It reminds me of kind of God Bluff era. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Scorched Earth. It is much better. There is an arrangement to it. It's not just here's the riff or two and here's the verse and then we're gonna play it a couple of times and do variations and jam on it, which is great. But in Babelsberg, it starts in one place and it ends somewhere else. It kind of goes into this kind of jammy, rocky section. And it just sounds awesome. It's really heavy. It's a really heavy song. The opening bit with the guitar and the saxophone, ba 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 wow wow wow, really good. Love that intro. Yeah, it's a great song. Then we finish off with On the Beach, which is kind of a. You can tell they wrote this about the overall experience of. Here we are again. We're doing it again. Reliving their youths, and it's nice. It's a polite song. Maybe kind of a little akin to Wondering from World Record, and the album wraps up on a really nice kind of uplifting note. Again, not my favorite on the album. Not my favorite Van der Graaf song by any means, but it's nice. A little reference to the Silver Surfer at the end. Like the surfs up bit. It's very un-Van der Graaf, but it's very Van der Graaf at the same time. And yeah, that's really the album present. It's like I said, the main album. I feel every time I listen to it, it's like, oh, that was it. That was it. It's only it's I don't even think it's 40 minutes. And then of course you also do get the second disc, obviously, which has the all the improvs and whatnot, but that's a kind of a different thing. But it all kind of goes in with the package. It's a celebration. It was a celebration of the fact that, hey, we are now, in 2005, we were living in a world that had Van der Graaf Generator in it, and that's a good thing. But I think, on retrospect, as the band carried on as a trio, this album seems to get more and more awkward. I might be wrong, but it doesn't feel like it's a part of the main run of 21st Century Van der Graaf. To me, anyway. But it's obviously essential. It had to happen. They needed to make Present to do what they went on to do. And I said I'd talk a little bit about this. This is Real Time, another double CD. It's a live album. Like I said, it's the reunion concert. It is their first show in 30-odd years. And because it's their first show, it's not my favorite live album by the band. It's great hearing all these wonderful live renditions of classic songs. It opens with the first side of God Bluff. You get Undercover Man and Scorched Earth. Refugees, again, I said I'm not a big fan of that song, but it's there. Every Bloody Emperor and Nutter Alert are the new songs they played. Lemmings is great. Great to have David Jackson in a modern incarnation. Of course, he would leave after this tour. More on that later. In the Black Room is a really, really cool song that's on here. This is a song that they brought back, that they played. And it's, of course, originally for the follow-up to Pawn Hearts, but ended up on Chameleon in the Shadow of the Night by Peter Hamel. But it is in spirit of Van der Graaf song. We get Darkness, Masks, one of my personal favorites, is on there. Childlike Faith, you can't really get away with not playing that. Same with Lemmings. Sleepwalkers, Mannered, Killer, and finishes with Wondering. That was the encore for their set. So, yeah, the only problem I have with this this album is it's not a proper document of the band on the road. That's what I like in a live album. I like hearing what the band sounds like. And because this is the first show in 30 years, and the weight of expectation that the band would have been under, and just the sheer event of it being the first show in nearly 30 years, it meant the band, I think, were quite okay. Play the notes right. I think they're very conscious of their playing, which I think is kind of not a Van der Graaf thing. So it's an interesting period. I'm sure there's those out there that really love the period of present and real time. But like I said, it was more something that had to happen, and it's unfortunate because David Jackson ended up leaving the band. But it's kind of an awkward period for me. It was a necessary thing that facilitated the band afterwards, and I'm sure people will disagree on me. Feel free to comment and disagree on that point, but yeah, I like it. It's just it's not part of the main run of the new Van der Graaf, anyway. But yeah, that's it for the reunion of Van der Graaf Generator in 2005. Yeah, that's all I have to say, so we will see you next time for Trisector. We'll see you then.